Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this amazing Tuesday afternoon, and I got to enjoy the rest of the week while I can because the Giants play the Cowboys on Thursday. Fantastic. But if you guys are interested in football, again, I highly recommend listening to all of our football podcasts that we have. There's a sports podcast that's going to go live directly after my segment. There was a football podcast that went live at 10:30 as well. And there's also the Chip Shot football podcast. There's college football. We have so many football podcasts. I highly recommend that you guys go ahead and tune into those if you can. If you guys are just as interested in football as I am. But I do know that you guys came here for basketball. So it's Elimination Day in the WNBA. So the elimination games are happening tonight on prime time. We're going to talk a little bit about that, give my predictions going into this game. And then in the second segment, we are going to be talking about Julius Randle trade rumors, because now there are trade rumors circulating around Julius Randle possibly getting traded. And then in the third segment, we are going to be talking about the Bulls and Zach LaVine. Apparently, the reports are saying that they're trying to amend their relationship, so we're just going to talk a little bit about that in the third segment. Then in the fourth segment, I'm going to give an update on Porziņģis' injury. As we know, he suffered an injury in the postseason. He was able to return for Game 1, played really well in Game 1. We'll talk a little bit about that in the fourth segment. And then we also have a special fifth segment, and be sure to stay in tune for that fifth segment. Spoiler alert, it's about LeBron, so that might ruffle your feathers, that might not ruffle your feathers, depending on where you stand. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll reveal exactly what the fifth segment is after the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you're interested. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a burning question, a hot take for the game, something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears, and we're all about keeping the conversation lively. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then go ahead and use Super Chat. You can click the $ below the chat box and send in your comments and or donations that way. And your message is guaranteed to get featured on the show. And, excuse me, if Super Chat isn't really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That's gsmcpodcast.net. You can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. And without further ado, let's continue on with this first segment, which is going over the elimination games that are going to be happening in the WNBA. Now, if I can give the WNBA credit for one thing about their schedule, it's that they made sure that the most important games of their series, of each team's respective series, happens on a day when there is no football. That is much more like it, and that makes way more sense than having these games either at the same day as football, or the same time as football, or during football, if that makes sense. Like, let's face it, I've said this before, WNBA cannot compete with the NFL, so this is much more like it in terms of scheduling, better construction, and this should have been how the playoffs started, but, you know, we live and we learn, I guess you could say, and, you know, they have to have their games on Sunday for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know the reasoning why they put their games on at the same time as the NFL. But at the very least, the most important games of the series aren't happening during NFL football. So the next game that's scheduled to be played is between the Liberty and the Aces. I'm just going to go ahead and look at the schedule real quick just to make sure. Actually, no, not the Aces, excuse me. The Dream. I can't believe I messed that up. Oops. The Aces do actually play on tonight as well. They just play against the Seattle Storm. So the first game that's going to go down is both of these games are going to be on ESPN. If you guys are interested and you guys want to tune in. And both of these games, this game is going to happen at 7:30, and then directly after that, the Aces are going to go up against the Storm at 9:30. And again, much more like it in terms of like what to expect and things like that. It makes total sense. Like, it makes total sense to have these games on a Tuesday when there is no football going on, and they're at a time where people are legitimately going to tune in because 7:30 is essentially prime time. And I apologize if you guys hear all those notifications. That's Team U, and I can't really do anything about those notifications, so I apologize for that in advance. But let me just see if like closing the window will work. There we go. And again, like these games, they should happen at this time. Now the Liberty, they have a series lead of 1-0. Again, these series, the first round is only a best of 3, as if you guys can't see from up there. And I have a feeling that the Liberty are easily going to win this game going into game 2. I believe they play in New York. Again, I could be wrong, but judging by how it's constructed and how the schedule looks, I don't think I am, and I have a feeling that they have home field advantage secured for this postseason. I'm not entirely sure how the home team advantage works in the first round of the postseason. I don't know if the number 1 team, like the higher ranked seed, gets 2 home games, and then the elimination game is going to be played at the lower seeded team. So it's like, the Liberty played at home first, and then the next game the Liberty play at home, and then if they have to play another game, then they play the next game in Atlanta. Not entirely sure how that works. We'll see how it goes into the future, because they did play at home last time. They did play at home in the last game. However, I'm not entirely sure. Yes, that's exactly how it works, actually. So if the losing team, if the Aces, not the Aces, why do I keep calling them the Aces? Good Lord. The Atlanta Dream, this team right here, if they end up beating the Liberty in the next game, which is a big if, then they get to play the elimination game at home, where they have much more of a chance to win given their home field advantage. Granted, the Liberty have an extremely strong team, and the Dream are one of the negative teams in the postseason, so I don't really think that they're going to be able to make it out of the postseason. I really don't think that that's going to be like a thing that's going to happen. I think the Liberty are easily going to sweep them just due to the talent that they have. Brenna Stewart is amazing. Sabrina Ionescu is amazing. Some of the best shooters that the league has seen in a while, and that the WNBA has seen, and Caitlin's going to be right up there, just letting you guys know. But at the end of the day, I have a feeling the Liberty are going to sweep. They're going to advance into the next round, where they play either the Aces or the Seattle Storm. And similar to how I feel about the Liberty, I think the Aces are easily going to blow by this team and beat them in this next coming game and advance into the next round, where they face off the Liberty. Now, the last game that the Aces they beat them by 11 points, and that's obviously like a blowout when you lose by double digits. I mean, I don't know. What would you guys consider a blowout? Do you consider 20 points a blowout? Do you consider 10 points a blowout, or do you consider 15 points a blowout? Because that's still rather up in the air with some people that I've talked to. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. And let me know if there's any team in the entire playoffs that is expecting an upset. I mean, honestly, the only team that I could really see upsetting the other at this point is the matchup between the Aces and the Liberty. Simply because the Aces have a very solid team, and they also have the unanimous MVP with A'ja Wilson. When you have somebody like A'ja Wilson, I don't think you can really count the team out until they're officially out, especially in a series that's best of 5. In a best of 3, you can make the argument that, maybe they won't make it that far, but at the same time, their team just looks way more dominant than the Seattle Storm, and A'ja just looks just as dominant. She didn't really have one of her signature outstanding performances like we've seen in the regular season, but again, this is the first postseason game of the entire postseason for the WNBA. I don't really expect players to be 100% in a rhythm in the postseason, especially in the WNBA here, where the series is only 2 games. And That being said, what I said about the Aces goes both ways for Seattle. And I don't really think that Seattle is going to be able to come back in this series, especially going up against somebody like Asia. So the winners of this tonight, that I have a feeling are going to win going forward, it might be an easy guess, but again, anything can happen, is the Dream, is the Liberty beating the Dream. They're definitely going to beat them. I mean, the only one of the few negative teams. They don't belong in the postseason. I'm sorry to say this. If you're a negative team, going into the postseason is a blessing for you. And the Aces are going to end up beating the Seattle Storm. And I wouldn't be surprised if the game is close in this series. However, at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if the Aces end up blowing out Seattle, given if Aja has a fantastic game in the postseason. So those are my predictions for the first round for today, the games that are going to be happening at 7:30. I'll do my other predictions tomorrow when the games go down at 7:30 and 9:30 respectively as well. Again, props to the WNBA for actually making these games happen on days where there isn't football. Like, thank you. That's what you're supposed to do. And we'll see how it goes in the postseason. Again, anything can happen. So these are just predictions. Let me know in the comments whether or not you agree with them, whether you disagree with them. But we're going to go into our first break and then go into the second segment where we talk about some Julius Randle trade rumors that are going into this, that are circulating right now as the NBA season is about to start. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about some Julius Randle trade rumors that are going around because, I mean, now they're circulating, especially with the start of the season. I'm sure that some teams are going to start trying to initiate some trades. And maybe they'll do it before the trade deadline. Again, the trade deadline is usually crazier, but we'll just talk about these trade rumors with Julius Randle and regarding the Knicks and their playoff chances and playoff implications, things like that. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take or a burning question, we're all ears. If there's anything that you want to send a message to, if you want your message to get seen on the show and guaranteed to get featured, go ahead and use Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box, send in your comments and or donations that way. If you don't like Super Chat, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker as well, gsmcpodcast.net, and send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. And with that out of the way, let's continue on with the second segment, going over some Julius Randle trade rumors. Again, just a little bit of a recap of what happened last season with Julius Randle. The Knicks were a winning team when they had Randle. Once they lost Randle, they were still a winning team. The problem with the Knicks was injuries. They could not battle those injuries when it really mattered in the postseason. A lot of players went down with an injury in Game 7, and a lot of players went down with an injury before Game 7 as well in the series against Indiana, and it ultimately costed them the series because there was essentially nobody in the rotation, barely any starters in the rotation. Jalen Brunson was out there alone most of the time on the offensive side of the ball, and you really wonder if they had Julius Randle in the series, could the outcome have been different? And is Julius Randle a value to the Knicks, and is he essential to the Knicks and their, advancing and actually making it past the second round? Because that's been a bugaboo of the Knicks for a very long time. When they're playoff teams, they usually only are able to make it to the second round and nothing more. It was like that during the era with Carmelo Anthony. They barely made it to they made it to the second round, but then once they got to the second round, they ultimately lost to a much better team, which ironically was the Pacers as well. And they also lost in the first round to the Miami Heat. Again, Melo couldn't really match up against LeBron all that well. LeBron's just a phenomenal athlete, and it's already a given task to ask to guard LeBron, especially when you're Carmelo Anthony, who's already a bad defender as it is. But aside from that, again, like the Knicks, and every single time the Knicks make it into the postseason, they always have that bugaboo. And quite frankly, in my honest opinion, I do have faith in the Knicks, and I hope that they end up making it far. The Nets are in a full rebuild, so the only other New York team to root for is going to be the Knicks in the postseason. And really, my thoughts on it is that it is almost impossible for the Knicks to actually make it far because of where they play in Madison Square Garden. It's like the mecca of basketball, and everybody wants to have their best game in the Garden. And this is sort of it's just a trend that it happens. Everybody wants to play phenomenally at the Garden, and they're sort of inspired by playing in the Garden, it feels like it. And when you have to play every single game in your home court super serious because the other team wants to be super serious in front of all the tourists in New York, then you're going at 100% in every single home game, when in the reality it's going to not only wear you down, but it'll also affect you in the postseason. That's just my thought right there. Let me know in the comments what you guys think playing in Madison Square Garden, if that does have an effect on the Knicks in the postseason. But aside from that, trade rumors regarding Julius Randle, now is not really the best time, because if the Knicks trade Julius Randle, I'm not even getting into the article yet, I'm just doing a hypothetical. If they do end up trading Julius Randle, they have to hope that they get some sort of defensive-minded center in return, because Mitchell Robinson has just been ruled out of the season, for the beginning of the season. He's not out for the entirety of the season, but his injury is most likely going to keep him sidelined at least until January, or even at most until January. We're not entirely sure on the injury timetable, but not having Mitchell Robinson is a big concern for the Knicks. And it's now that they lost Isaiah Hartenstein to Oklahoma City, who is going to be the anchor on the defensive side of the ball that is going to hold the team down together on the defensive end and actually guard the big men? Julius Randle is going to be one of the very few big men that the team actually has. And if the Knicks are going to be discussing trade talks, they're going to have to at least acquire a center or a competent power forward that can defend the rim while, the rest of the players actually end up scoring. Because, OG guarding a center, that does not sound ideal at all. And I know they have pretty good offensive rebounders, with Josh Hart and OG respectively, and again, their rebounding is incredibly valuable, but I don't know if that's going to be a position that you want to maintain long term. So, going into this article, Randle's Knicks finished second in the East, but his injury kept him out of the 2024 playoffs, resulting in a semifinal exit. Randle has been key to their success, helping drive deep playoff runs and nearly reaching Eastern Conference Finals last season despite missing games due to injury. However, with new additions like Mikal Bridges, Randle's future with the team appears uncertain. And I said this once the trade ended up going through, and once that trade ended up going through, I just had a feeling that the Knicks were going to let Randle go, but so far they haven't done that yet. However, and the Knicks are sort of, it seems to be like the Knicks are shifting their strategy, shifting the strategy and what they're going for with this Villanova squad. It seems like that Randle's position on the spot might be in jeopardy. Now, although he's been a key player, the team is still exploring some trade offers. And one of the teams that is legitimately interested in Julius Randle is Charlotte Hornets. According to Basketball Forever on X, formerly known as Twitter, Charlotte Hornets is the best landing spot for Julius Randle in the event he no longer fits into the system at New York. The Hornets, they are interested in Julius for several reasons. His skills would match what they need. Randle is good at scoring inside, which would work well with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller's outside shooting. Randle is also an excellent defensive rebounder, which would help the Hornets' defense, especially with their rim protector, Mark Williams. So the Hornets could be a bit of a more competitive team if Randle joined in the starting lineup with Ball, Miller, Miles, Bridges, and Williams. And this lineup would have a lot of mixed scoring, defense, and playmaking, potentially helping the Hornets actually make it into the play-in tournament or even in the playoffs. And when LaMelo Ball was healthy for Charlotte, they were a play-in team. So I can only imagine that if they add Julius Randle, it would elevate their team. However, I'm sure that if the Knicks are going to construct a deal surrounding Julius Randle, they're going to try and include Mark Williams in that deal, since Mark Williams is a valuable rim protector for Charlotte. And Mark Williams could probably bring that defensive impact over to the Knicks for the remainder, or for the time being, that Mitchell Robinson ends up recovering from an injury. So like he'll sort of be the man that they go to on the defensive side until Mitchell Robinson ends up recovering. And this could go well for either side, honestly. Like I don't really see the Hornets being like, I do see them being a playoff team. I don't really see them being that much of a threat in the playoffs, however. I mean, one thing about Julius Randle that I absolutely will not defend is how he's played in the postseason. He's rather inconsistent. He has memorable moments, like that game winner against the Miami Heat. That was a very great shot, or I think it was Cleveland. I forget exactly which team it was, but this wasn't last year. This was like a few years ago, and yeah, Julius Randle, like, he did win the game for the Knicks, but at the end of the day, it's like, that was really the only highlight I can remember of Julius Randle in the postseason, because most of his performances are rather mediocre and not what we usually expect a player like him to elevate in the postseason, or at least, like, do a lot better in the postseason than what he's been doing. And sad to say, he has not been doing better in the postseason, and this injury that he had going into the postseason only makes it worse, because you're sort of being a liability when you're constantly getting injured in the postseason than a reliability. And this is the same problem that I've had with Joel Embiid, just constantly not being there for the team in the postseason. And a lot of Philly fans are going to be like, oh, but he gets hurt all the time, so it's like you can't really blame him for losing the series when he's injured. I mean, I can if he gets injured in every single postseason. Like, part of the game is staying healthy for the postseason. And I mean, quite frankly, his playstyle doesn't allow him to stay healthy, in my opinion, but that's a completely different topic. So those are the trade rumors surrounding Julius Randle. Again, let me know what situation you think would work best for him. I think the Knicks should probably keep him until, like, I think they should keep him simply because they do need that defense around the rim, and they do need a competent power forward to actually play and guard some centers if they need to, because let's face it, they don't have a rim protector as of late, and Mitchell Robinson's rim protection is actually incredibly valuable. So they just have to hold off until then, and I think that's when their season is going to really take off. So that's all I have for the second segment, and now we're going to go ahead into a short break. And after that break, we're going to talk about Zach LaVine and recent reports on the Bulls and Zach LaVine and how their relationship is going, because there was a lot of talk about Zach LaVine being traded, and I'm just going to go ahead and sort of revisit that conversation right after the short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that longer than normal wait. I was putting eye drops in my eye. It's really difficult staring at the screen and the light directly in front of me, but that's besides the point. So in this third segment, we are going to be talking about Julius Randle, Zach LaVine and the situation around the Chicago Bulls. Now, as you guys know, Zach LaVine and the Bulls, they've been in trade talks for about the longest time. It seems every single trade deadline, Zach LaVine's name gets mentioned on the trade block. And every single time, the Bulls just don't trade him. I've been saying this since the trade rumors were starting. I knew Zach LaVine wasn't going to get traded. His name always appears on the trade block, but ends up being that no team is really interested in legitimately trading for him. And then he goes to amend his relationship once again and goes ahead and continues to play with the Chicago Bulls. This happens like all the time. It happens almost every single off season. And it happens every single time with the Bulls in regards to Zach LaVine. He's always on the trade block. He always gets talked about that, how great it would be if he was on another team. And then he stays with Chicago. It's really like a problem. And it's happening once again. The article starts out with the header saying, everyone is saying the same thing after reports of Chicago Bulls and Zach LaVine mending their relationship amid off-season drama goes viral. So we're going to go ahead into this article. Following DeMar DeRozan and Caruso's departure in the summer, the Bulls were expected to trade All-Star Zach LaVine. This wasn't the first time that they were expected to trade Zach LaVine. However, the franchise changed course ahead of its 2024 to 2025 season and is reportedly mending its relationship with the 29-year-old guard, causing a social media stir. I don't know how often and how many times the Bulls are just going to continue saying he's going to get traded and then doesn't end up trading him. I don't know how many times it's going to happen, but it's about time that the Bulls actually legitimately commit to a full rebuild of the team. Because, let's face it, everything that they have been doing has not worked. They tried teaming him up with DeMar and Vucevic, and it seemed like it would be good, but then the honeymoon did not last. They were only a play-in team. They weren't even, and at times they weren't even a play-in team at some point. And again, it's just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment for the Chicago Bulls. And like, it's all in the Zach LaVine era, and it's just like, when are you going to give up? Like, when are you going to give up on him? And it doesn't seem like they're really letting up. They really want him to succeed. And LaVine, he joined the Bulls from Minnesota in 2017, and was featured in the 2022 NBA playoffs. In the last 2 seasons, however, Chicago failed to qualify for the playoffs, losing out in playing games, and due to his injury last season, Zach LaVine only played 25 games, averaging 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, and almost 4 assists, And this is part of the reason why why a lot of people don't want to trade for Zach LaVine, because while he is a talent, he tends to be very injury prone, and why would you trade for a talent that tends to be rather injury prone? And I mean, he's a fantastic dunker, a fantastic shooter, has great handles, a fantastic player. But again, injuries, like, your best ability is your availability. And no one is really going to take a risk on trading for somebody who's not only I don't even want to say mediocre, because he's a very good talent, but like a good talent. How about that? Not a great or an outstanding talent. No one is going to risk trading for a good talent. They're going to risk trading for an outstanding talent, without a doubt, yes. But a good talent, I'm not entirely sure. And again, maybe this isn't Zach LaVine's season. Again, we don't know, because he's constantly injured every time. And he's not getting any younger in this league. And that's another thing that's really concerning with the Bulls. And I mean, he's still relatively young, but again, as the years go on, if they keep trying to create a formula that works for him on Chicago, I think that's only detrimenting his own career. But that's just me, however. So, following DeMar DeRozan's free agency trade to the Sacramento Kings and replacing Caruso in a trade with Josh Giddey from OKC, LaVine remains the biggest name on the Bulls roster. However, a report from The Athletic suggested that the franchise is repairing the bond with LaVine, and the fans on social media have a lot of mixed reactions. So let's go ahead and see what the reactions are. So, Zach LaVine might as well leave. The Bulls are doing him no favor. He is legit wasting his time and prime there. And I completely agree with that quote coming in from @WillDeSanin from Twitter, from X, formerly known as Twitter. Excuse me about that. And really, there's another tweet that comes in saying the saga will never end, and he completely understands and is completely aware of the Zach LaVine dilemma that's been going on with the Bulls. It happens every single time. Bulls should ship him out to other NBA teams. Oh wait, no team wants him. That's another post coming in from Health00810. And yes, that is also very, very true, because again, no team is going to be willing to make a risk and make that leap with Zach LaVine. He's just not worth it at the end of the day. And it's really bad, because it's like, I really think that Zach should just abandon ship, honestly. Like, just get out of there himself, because it doesn't seem like the Bulls are willing to, they want to get rid of him, but then when they figure out that they can't get rid of him, they're like, oh, okay, well, we could keep you for a little bit. We could keep you, and, we could see what we could do. We're probably not going to do much, but, we'll see what we could do. And it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to stay with that? You're essentially staying with a team that is willing to give you up if another team offers a good deal. And they just won't give you up because no team has offered them a good deal. And it's just I don't know what you expect in a trade package for Zach LaVine. He's not LeBron. He's not any of these high caliber players that should demand respect in a trade. I'm sorry to say this, but he's a great talent. He's a good talent in the NBA. He's just not all that. I'm sorry, but not all that. That's really all that I can say about it. He's good, but he's just not all that. And not all that is basically just teams aren't willing to risk a big trade. And that's sort of what I feel like the Bulls are trying to get out of Zach LaVine. And I'm just if the Pelicans were able to acquire DeJounte without needing to trade away Brandon Ingram, I don't know what kind of caliber players you legitimately expect coming out of Zach LaVine. That's just me, however. So, why the Chicago Bulls couldn't trade him? Ahead of the 2024 and 2025 season, the Bulls have made notable roster changes. So, the Bulls were looking to trade LaVine alongside DeRozan and Caruso to nab the top pick in the 2025 draft. However, recent reports claim that the Bulls and LaVine are mending their relationship. According to Darnell Mayberry of The Athletic, LaVine has vowed not to overstep or stunt the development of younger players. Many believe his massive contract was why the Bulls could not trade him. The 29-year-old has 3 years remaining on his 5-year, $215 million contract. And again, that's another reason why he really doesn't want to why teams don't want to make a risk in that move. I didn't even bring up the contract and how much money he's getting paid for playing only 25 games in the last season. Like, that contract is, like, looking at it now, it seems rather egregious given what the Bulls have been able to do in the postseason. Then at the end of the day, that is their best player. So I mean, you have to sort of pay him the big bucks. I totally understand that point, but it seems like it's crippling the franchise a little bit. And let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. But I mean, like, this is really, like, again, no teams are going to want to trade for that kind of player under that much money. And this was a similar problem with Russell Westbrook and his contract, except the difference is teams were actually willing to get rid of Russell Westbrook and not pay him, and other teams were willing to use Russell Westbrook to see how much effectiveness they can get out of it. So it was a weird situation with Russell Westbrook, but I mean, it's like he was traded from OKC to Houston, then immediately from Houston all the way to Washington, then from Washington to the LA, then from LA all the way to Utah, then he signs back with the different LA team, then the LA team trades him back to Utah where he then gets a contract buyout and then goes to Denver. Like, it's chaos. It was chaos with the Westbrook situation, and mainly, well, at the beginning, like when he actually still had the massive contract with OKC, like this was the reason why teams were trading him, because they didn't want to pay the contract. It's sort of the same thing, except a little bit vice versa, just a little bit, because now the thing is Zach LaVine has all the money, but teams are not willing to pay him that money, and they don't see any use in him. So it's not a very ideal situation. Now, again, LaVine, when he played in a full season, 77 games, he did average 24 points in 2022 and 2023, along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists as well. Despite starting the season on a high, scoring his career high 51 points on October 28th, LaVine's injury in February ended his season, and the Bulls guard must perform well in the upcoming season to get traded before the deadline. Like, people and teams have to find and see the usefulness in Zach LaVine before they actually pull the trigger on a trade, and that hasn't really been something that the Bulls can showcase given his injury status and how often he gets injured, and it's really hurting this team. So that's all that I really have to say about the whole Zach LaVine situation. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the 4th segment, where I give a bit of an update on Kristaps Porziņģis and his injury and when he's expected to recover right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, I'm just going to give a quick update on Kristaps Porziņģis and his injury, because Brad Stevens recently mentioned this, well, not really mentioned this, but he recently told reporters some rather optimistic news for all of you Boston Celtics fans. I'm sure TJ is out there watching. Maybe he's not even watching, but I'm sure he'll watch soon and be like, yeah, let's go, Kristaps, championship number 2, all that enthusiasm, right? And Brad Stevens, he told reporters on Tuesday that the veteran forward is, quote, very optimistic. And he also has this other quote saying, we're very pleased with where he is and maybe a little surprised. Stevens declined to offer a timeline for when Porziņģis is expected to be back, however. So no idea if this is sort of like Brad Stevens' way of catfishing, like, and all of these guys sort of expecting like, oh no, he'll be fine, and like later down the road it might end up backfiring. But assuming that if there is no timetable on when he's going to return, I wouldn't really be that optimistic. But again, that's just me, because like timetables, and I feel like timetables are a very essential part in terms of injuries and updates. And if you can't really give one, then I don't really feel like you should go off and saying like we're very pleased with where he is. And I mean, at least to the media, right? Because like not giving a timetable looks a little bit weird, because it's like, okay, you're surprised at his progression, then give us a timetable, right? So midday through the 2024 NBA Finals, the Celtics announced that the 7'4" Latvian suffered a torn retinaculum, excuse me if I completely messed up that word, allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon. Again, I'm not a doctor, so forgive me if I completely botched all of those names. The human body was never really, I mean, I know I am a human body, but that wasn't really a strong subject for me in classes. So forgive me if I completely mess up the pronunciation of these words. Again, I am not a doctor. So I'm just reading the quote of what the other doctors are saying. And while he did suit up in the series for Game 5 and clinch the series, he was clearly less than 100% and only played 16 minutes in this matchup. And, I mean, it doesn't really matter because the Celtics, they have a very, very dominant team, and they have a very dominant starting lineup. Not to mention they already have a veteran who comes off the bench in Al Horford. Not only is he a fantastic three-point shooter, but surprisingly, he's still a very decent defender given his age. And again, still brings value and fills in the role that you need, so that way Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Drew Holiday, Derek White, they all can operate rather efficiently, not having to worry about giving the ball to Kristaps all the time. Like, you can make an argument that, I mean, the team could possibly play better with Al Horford, given the experience that the team has playing with Al Horford as opposed to Kristaps. But that is a completely different conversation. I'm not saying that Kristaps isn't talented whatsoever. I'm just saying that the lineup that they have with Al Horford at center could still legitimately work. And so, according to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne, the expectation is sometime in December. This is what Stevens said. Pardon me, I misread the statement. And the expectation is sometime in December, he said to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne about when he should make his season debut. But I'm feeling really good, and I'm working towards hopefully playing earlier than that. Oh, wait a minute. This is actually Kristaps saying this. I'm so sorry for that. And again, the way that they word these quotes on Bleacher Report is really annoying. But yeah, so this is sort of his expectation. Obviously, Brad Stevens, he did not give a timetable for this, so maybe Kristaps is just being optimistic, but we'll see about that. So his injury is the biggest variable for the Celtics in their repeat bid since they return the bulk of their last year's squad. So they're far from the end of their championship cycle as well, with stars like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both in their respective primes. But not having Porziņģis for the first few months is not ideal. Obviously, it's not going to be ideal. However, and his injury, it only really adds to the long-standing concerns about his durability, which is a thing that he's had a problem with recently. But at the end of the day, I mean, the Celtics roster is still a very strong roster, like how I said before. So I don't really feel like the loss of Kristaps is that detrimental. Again, that detrimental. Like, it shouldn't warrant for like a whole alarm around the city going around like, oh my god, the season's over, this, that, and the other. It doesn't warrant that. So I really, there's really no worry for the Celtics, honestly. And they're one of the lucky teams because they really don't have to worry for about a year or two more when they have to worry about contract negotiations and how expensive all of these players are most likely going to end up being towards the end of the season. I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're already making way too much money as it is. Like, they're making so much money from the Boston Celtics. And imagine adding more money onto that with the rest of the starting lineup, trying to even keep that starting lineup alive and their championship hopes alive. Like, it's really going to be that second apron is a killer. And again, this could also completely change, assuming that Jeff Bezos ends up purchasing the Boston Celtics. I have no idea if those talks are actually legitimate or if that's even going to happen, but there is a chance that it could. And if they do, and maybe he's willing to actually pay that luxury tax because he has so much money, who knows? Guy's practically Scrooge McDuck. So, on a more positive note for reading the situation is that the 29-year-old is on track to come back with plenty of time to work himself back into game shape and get to his best ahead of the postseason. So that's one positive that you can look at for the Celtics. Like, during the regular season, they're most likely going to beat every single team. Not entirely sure how it's going to happen on opening night, though, because on Friday, October 4th, when the games legitimately start, the Boston Celtics are going to be playing against the Denver Nuggets. Now, if you guys remember from my previous segment, this was the team that Jason Tatum was most afraid of and thought could match up very well against his own team, the Boston Celtics. And once the Denver Nuggets got eliminated from the postseason, that was allegedly when Jason Tatum said that he knew that they were going to win the championship. And seeing as Denver was able to beat the Boston Celtics twice in the regular season, I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to do the job again. And I wouldn't be surprised that if they had made the finals, that they would be able to do the job again in 5 games at the very least. Or, honestly, the series might go to 6 if it was Denver against Boston. But that's the injury report for Kristaps Porziņģis. Again, not really much that you need to worry about because, I mean, you are the Boston Celtics, and the Celtics are just a strong team overall. Losing Kristaps, who is arguably, during the regular season at least, losing Kristaps, who was arguably one of the least valuable players in their 5-man starting lineup. Again, it's really difficult to scale exactly Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, definitely 1 and 2, without a question about that. You can order them in whichever way you want, doesn't matter. And then right below that is, in my opinion, Drew Holiday as the third option. Then it's between Derek White or Kristaps Porziņģis. Really depends on the night. It's a toss-up, to be honest, and you can make the argument that it's Kristaps, given his scoring prowess and his reputation in the league. Or you can make the argument that it's Derek White, who has been turning into a rising star in the NBA in the system that the Boston Celtics are running. Like, he literally just straight up took off his hair, put it under his chin, wear it as a beard, and ever since he went bald, he's just ascended almost. It's like Michael Jordan when he went bald, or Kareem when he went bald. He just ascended into, and even Kobe when he went bald, just ascension into greatness. And it's it's not common. I mean, it is pretty common for a great basketball player to be bald. So, just going to throw that out there. Again, not a very big Derek White fan. I mean, he is a fantastic player. He has been a very vital piece to the team. I just thought it was, it's kind of funny how he turns bald and, grows a beard and then just out of nowhere just immediately just completely balls out and just plays phenomenally. I think it's rather funny. I mean, just the baldness just completely ascended him. Let me know it's kind of a crazy theory, but I mean, it's really odd how a lot of the good basketball players tend to be bald. But just a little topic right there. So next we're going to go ahead and go into the 5th segment where we talk about, I spoiled it before, it was going to be about LeBron, and this is actually going to be about what Austin Reeves had to say about the bubble in 2020. Yes, we're going back to 2020. This is, like I said, it would probably ruffle some feathers, so I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you're a LeBron fan or if you're a LeBron hater and see what happens. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be talking about Austin Reaves and his comments about the NBA bubble and what he believes is actually like what is going down and what went down in the bubble and why the bubble isn't really taken that seriously. Now, obviously, LeBron James in 2020 ended up winning the championship in the bubble with the Los Angeles Lakers. First year that they acquired Anthony Davis, ended up immediately getting success. And a lot of fans, once that happened, they immediately, I kid you not, immediately started just completely criticizing the bubble, claiming that it was illegitimate and that the championship should not count. So when LeBron James joined the Lakers, he envisioned bringing one of the NBA's most historic franchises back to prominence, and that's exactly what he did. Along with Anthony Davis, I'm just reading the article and it's continuing. Along with Anthony Davis, he was able to win the NBA championship in 2020. It's hard to know what would have happened had the pandemic not happened, right? But the Lakers were the number one seed in the Western Conference at the time, and they were looking like the best team regardless of whether or not the NBA was going to shut down anyway. Even though the Lakers have been able to get back into the finals, it's hard to deny how, special that 2020 team was and that they were deserving of the championship. I mean, this was also, just think of the context behind it. In 2020, that was the year that Kobe ended up passing away in that helicopter crash, and Gigi and everybody else on the helicopter, rest in peace. And it seemed like that Kobe's death, I mean, it fits the narrative pretty well. It motivated the Lakers into playing much better, and it motivated them into winning the NBA Finals for Kobe Bryant. And for Gigi and the rest of those passengers, well, mainly for Kobe and Gigi, and mainly for Kobe, honestly. And it fits the narrative really well. And at the end of the day, they ended up getting the job done. And people, they still try to sort of negate the championship that the Lakers ended up winning. And a lot of people, they call it a Mickey Mouse ring, like, because, the games were played in, ESPN and Orlando, Florida, in Disneyland, where the ESPN section for Disney World, the ESPN section for Disney World is like over in Florida. That was essentially where the bubble was being held. I'm sure all of you guys remember that. And it's like it gets called a Mickey Mouse ring for that. Now, Reaves made a good point in this commenting, in the comments that he has. So he says, quote, "It's not a Mickey Mouse ring. I don't want to say it's the hardest. Everybody had an equal playing field. I think it's the same as every other year. I just think if LeBron doesn't win it, then nobody says anything." And this is the reason why this entire bubble is considered illegitimate. I don't care what side you're on. You think that the bubble is illegitimate, it's because you are a LeBron hater. This was the reason why the bubble was considered illegitimate. If it was anyone else that wasn't LeBron, then they would have considered this championship legitimate, and they would have used it to bash LeBron's legacy, saying it was another missed opportunity and it was another finals loss for him, if that were to end up happening. And how do I know this? The Lakers and LeBron get more hate for winning a title than the Clippers do for not even making the finals. Like, people forget that in the bubble, the Clippers choked the entire series away against Denver and allowed Denver to make it farther than them in the postseason. They blew another 3-1 lead with what was thought to be the best backcourt defensive duo since Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. The same two people that ended up winning back-to-back-to-back championships twice. They got compared to that. And as a duo, they have not been able to make it past the second round. The Clippers do not get enough hate for that. But the Lakers, for winning a title, get all the hate for winning that title. It makes 0 sense. It genuinely does not make any sense. And towards the beginning of the bubble, everybody was saying how amazing it is and how it was like, oh, everybody is on an even playing field. So it's like, sure, it negates home field advantage, but now we can actually see pound for pound which team is the better team without that kind of advantage. And on a neutral site, we get to see pound for pound how that team has which team legitimately has the advantage and which is the better team. It's similar to how in college football, like, these bowl games, they don't happen at home. Like, they rarely happen in your home field, in, like, your own territory. They happen on a neutral site, and everybody loves it when it happens on a neutral site. It's more or less the same thing. And because LeBron ended up winning, and because the Clippers choked, he gets scrutinized for it. It makes zero sense. It makes no sense. The banner is still up there for 2020. That championship is legitimate, and there's people that still argue to this day that that bubble was a fluke, and it makes no sense how they argue that. And they want to argue that by saying, oh, well, now teams like that actually, now the Lakers, they haven't made it farther than this ever since the bubble happened, and that's sort of like the reason why they dub it as a fluke. But there is a lot of context to be had in that debate. So, for one, when they matched up against Phoenix once that bubble returned, like once they returned, the NBA season returned, they were up 2-1 in the series. LeBron pushed that series to give the Lakers the lead. Then Anthony Davis went down with an injury. Of course, LeBron with the Lakers is not going to make it past the first round. I'm sorry to say this, but LeBron is talented. The rest of the team was god-awful. Not talented at all. And on top of that, you could also blame front office and management because they ended up trading away a majority of their championship players for Russell Westbrook, of all people. And I have my mixed opinions about Russell Westbrook. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he's god-awful. And let me know in the comments what you guys think of Russ. I'm not a very big fan of him and how he plays. I mean, he's a great person, yes, and I love him I love how good of a person he is, but as a player and his play style, no. Not a big fan of it, but that's just me. And, that also hurt the franchise eventually. Then they get another D'Angelo Russell, and they lose in the first round with D'Angelo Russell, mainly because the Denver Nuggets, just out of nowhere, they shoot ridiculous percentages against the Lakers. In fact, I might do a segment. I might do another fifth segment where I talk about the Denver Nuggets and their ridiculous shooting spike whenever they play with the Lakers. I might just do that just for giggles, because the jump in efficiency between when they play the Lakers against any other team is staggering, especially with Jamal Murray. I don't know what it is, but Jamal turns into Michael Jordan whenever he goes up against LeBron. It makes no sense. But Austin Reeves continues to talk about how LeBron James doesn't play one-on-one because it's not real basketball. That's a completely different topic, but I do agree with the fact that one-on-one is not real basketball. And let's face it, LeBron would beat a majority of NBA players in on one-on-one. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, the only player that legitimately in the NBA, I think, that has a chance of stopping LeBron in a one-on-one, like in a legitimate 1v1, is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, that's really the only player that I think could actually put up not only a decent challenge against LeBron, but also actually be able to keep up with LeBron and stay in front of LeBron. And every other player, they do have their faults that LeBron can exploit. Giannis is like the only player that I can think of that doesn't really have any flaws to exploit. Kevin Durant is another close one, but at the end of the day, I think Durant is just too skinny and not strong enough to stop LeBron when he backs him down on the post and gets an easy layup. But that's just me, however. Not going to really talk about the one-on-one and, the one-on-one comments that LeBron had, because I don't think it's really that relevant. But again, this bubble is only illegitimate because LeBron won. End of story, period. No questions about it. So that's all that I have for basketball for today. And be sure to tune into the WNBA games that are going to be happening later today. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show. Leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. That's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson. I'm starving, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit.